And welcome into the Wednesday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Joseph, how we doing? Good morning. What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Whoa, this thing's interesting today. This little mic stand. People, I think we were advised that we should talk about equipment as much as possible, right?
I think at least 30 minutes per day.
Yeah, so let me start out by saying this mic stand's being really weird, Nick Keyser. But pretty good. Last night I enjoyed some C. Mace and Max Hers on the animated Preds broadcast. I still am fascinated by how,
It's really blowing your mind.
What happened in the hockey game, then it was on the cartoon. I find that to be, I'm like a caveman lawyer. Like, how is there people in my little box in my living room talking to me? And then I also enjoyed watching the Warriors win at the Grizzly with Steph scoring, 52, Draymond with a triple-double, and Jimmy Butler 27. Watch out for the Dubs.
Things seem to be going really well for the Grizzlies since they fired their coach right before the playoffs started.
Yeah, that really seems like a smart move. Yeah. Very weird.
Kind of a wonder we don't see more teams in sports do this all the time.
Right.
Fire their coach in April when the playoffs begin in 2 weeks.
Right. We worked all year. We're going to be in the postseason. Let's mix it up.
Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning. Yeah, doing well. So, Joe, what is going on with your microphone?
I mean, look at it.
I
guess it's okay.
It looks good.
It's not having a hard time staying up or anything
like
it used to.
That thing's all set in there.
Yeah, at least PK's not coming in here bitching about it already, you know?
He'll be here soon enough.
Just remember PK was basically doing push-ups with the microphone. That was good.
I know, yeah, he was.
Yeah. I don't know. But it seems fine now.
Did you bring your dry towel, Joe, to wipe it off, I guess? I don't know. You were talking about all the dry butt sweat and stuff. The mic okay too?
Although my commentary is doo-doo sometimes, I don't actually put my butt on the microphone.
Good.
Yeah. So.
Not as of yet. It hasn't happened.
Yeah, not yet. That may be coming up soon.
Here's what I think of the Titans draft. Paul Kuharski will be with us later in the show. I was texting with PK yesterday, and he says right around 7:30 is when he'll be in today. So we'll have PK a little bit later in the program. Preds fans, we've got a conversation for you coming up later this hour that kind of gets added to after the 8-4 debacle that was last night in Columbus. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the show as well. Joe, to begin things here, the tush push, which we spoke about yesterday with Charles Robinson and throughout the show yesterday, the vote that was supposed to happen got tabled. And it seems like there were 16 teams by the reporting around this that were opposed to or that were in favor of banning the tush push moving forward. They needed more than that. So I don't know exactly what this is going to look like in terms of the tush push and the vote and what that's going to happen or what's going to happen with that moving forward here. And, you heard Charles yesterday talking about maybe some changing of the language that you might need to have with it moving forward here. But the vote for the moment tabled for the tush push and the banning of said play.
Yeah, Roger Goodell, the stuff he was talking about in regard to this makes me think he would like to see it banned. So, and the one point he made was, data right now, there's not a lot of injury data, which is true. But there are concerns with, basically the mechanics of the play, which I agree with. So I'm going to be on team ban. I heard somebody on Sportsish talking about, I didn't know, didn't catch who it was, but making a good point. Back in the day, Barry Sanders didn't need someone pulling him or pushing him.
That was a caller,
Walter
yeah.
Payton. That was just a caller?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good call. And it's true. I just the idea of pulling and pushing. I'm a rugby parent now. So I've become, I like it a lot, but it is different. It's a different game. And there is pulling and pushing in that. And I think in some ways you need to keep football and rugby separate.
I would agree.
One of those ways.
I would agree.
Pull and push your teammates on offense. The offense has enough advantages.
I would agree with that too. There's certainly a lot of advantages in modern football geared toward the offense. So in the meantime, it's been tabled, so it's still legal at the moment. We'll see exactly what happens on that front with the tush push as we move forward.
You know what's going to happen this year? Someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get hurt in that thing, and then it'll be like, okay, there you go. Now there's your data, and this will be the last year of the tush push.
Titans going to run it this year?
Prediction.
Cam Ward, the tush push, or like you're going to bring in Chig to do the tush push? Some teams use their tight end.
Do the tight end to bring the tight end in.
I think the Lions use Laporta.
Yep.
Packers definitely use Tucker Kraft. You can use the tight end.
Yeah. If your quarterback is slight, yeah, that's the better thing. Again, like not everybody's quarterback squats 600 like Jalen Hurts does.
That's true.
So, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe Will Levis is still the quarterback. Well, Will Levis, I think, would be a pretty good tush push.
I think he might be.
Candidate. But so, when we talk about the pros and cons of Will Levis being the starter next year, put that in the pro category.
Well, we're going to get into some comments on Will Levis that was said on this station yesterday, a little bit later in the program. So looking forward to that. So we spoke with Charles Robinson yesterday and threw the idea out there of, what if the Titans are playing some games here at the draft and they really want Shedeur Sanders all along and they're interested in trading back and picking up some extra picks and then going the Shedeur Sanders route, maybe with a trade with the Giants at 3. And Charles Robinson talked in that answer yesterday about the evaluation of Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders. Here's what Charles Robinson had to say yesterday on the program.
Every passing week, it's kind of felt like I've heard differing opinions or the momentum's changed. And there's a little bit of sort of reading the tea leaves yourself when you see a pro day and you're like, all right, well, let's see who they sent. How much are they driving into, social media wise and the number of executives and coaches and everybody's going to watch him and they're working him out. And what is the private workout like? When do they go to dinner with him? You pour all the resources into it, but I will say, get back to basics. Just look at the evaluation and overall for them to pass on Cam Ward for Shedeur. I think personally, again, and this is looking broadly across the entire league, they would have to be seeing something that I would say 90 to 95% of the rest of the league is not seeing, with the evaluation between those two guys and coming to the conclusion that Shedeur is the better player.
So would have to be seeing something that 90 to 95% of the rest of the league is not seeing, if that's the way the Titans are ultimately going to go here and going with Shedeur over Cam Ward via trade back. What did you make of Charles and his evaluation of the Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders stuff yesterday?
It makes sense. Of course, I'd love to know like the gap each team. So we would assume that most of the teams have Ward ahead of Sanders, but I bet you there's differences in the gap, right?
Sure.
Between those teams. And that's the thing here is the idea of, the Titans, maybe they would take Ward 1 if they're forced to stick and pick, they'd take Ward. But if they don't see a huge gap between them, okay, so Ward, we talked about Matic. Or we didn't talk about Matic. We will talk about Matic.
We will.
You referred to Matic. We got some Trevor Matic sound later. And he made the point yesterday that that he would take Shedeur and the picks, which of course means it's a trade down, over just Cam. So even though he agrees that Cam is better than Shedeur, and I would agree with this. I of course agree with this because I would take Shedeur anyway. But he doesn't believe the gap, at least in his mind, is big enough that like the picks wouldn't make up the difference. So that's obviously a question for the Titans. Even if they don't actually have Sanders ahead of Ward, and if they do, then of course they are outliers, right? But maybe they don't have a huge gap.
Yeah, it could be. And and then that gets down to, all right, well, who do you think is the better quarterback and who do you think has the best chance to be a franchise quarterback? If I'm a Titans fan and you're picking a quarterback, that's probably the way I'd rather see you go, just because I think if you get that position right, then it takes care of a lot of things on your football team. And if you get that position wrong, then it wrecks a lot of things on your football team. So personally, I would rather not mess around with the picks and get the quarterback right if that's the way you're going and you're picking a quarterback in the draft. I know some Titans fans don't agree with that, and they would say, well, if you feel like it's relatively close, take the lesser quarterback and try to get some picks that can bolster your roster around that guy. It would be interesting to see how the Titans view that and how different Titans fans view that, because I think we've heard from Titans fans that kind of view it on both different sides of that, Joe, throughout this entire process.
See, I'm a believer in good quarterback, great team is easier to engineer than finding the great quarterback. So I think that Cam Ward has a higher ceiling, but I think that Shedeur Sanders has a higher floor. And I'd rather take someone who I think is going to be a good quarterback, who I think is going to be reliable, again, accurate, get the ball out, and he's going to be good, as opposed to someone who, if it all comes together, like I think Will Levis's ceiling is higher than Shedeur Sanders' ceiling too. But we see what happened. Great, high ceiling, but you can't.
I mean, Jamarcus Russell had a high ceiling.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Like I'm more in favor of give me someone who is good, can get the ball out, sees things, gets the ball to the right spot. Again, Jared Goff. Jared Goff is not he's not blowing anybody away with anything he does other than that, right? But you put a great team around him. All of a sudden, we're talking about Jared Goff for MVP. Okay, so that's how I look at it. I would rather try to build. I think it's a lot safer pick, frankly. But but Cam Ward's going to go earlier. Texter says Sanders has a noodle arm and holds the ball way too. Yeah, the hold the ball way too long thing is such a misconception based on an awful offensive line. Cannot make reads. That's not true. The risk of drama, okay, that's fine. If you want to go with the risk of drama stuff, but the cannot make reads, holds the ball too long. You didn't watch him play. I'm sorry, you didn't watch him play.
And I also would not say that Sanders has a noodle arm. He does not have as good of an arm as Cam Ward. There's no doubt about that.
No, I mean, if you like that throw he made to beat Baylor, that was insane. Insane throw. Yeah, he doesn't have a noodle arm. He doesn't have quite Cam Ward's arm talent for sure. Yeah, the drama stuff, I mean, I guess if that's some teams probably do make that a thing. Some don't. I wouldn't, but hey, I guess maybe I'm just I'm a primetime fan. What can I tell you?
615-737-1025, our phone number. There is another position that the Titans are going to have to address at some point here in the draft that we got into with Charles yesterday that I think is going to be really interesting to see how the Titans prioritize it and who is left for them to select if it goes the way we think it's going to go. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robby and Rexrode broadcasting from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on the Titans and the NFL draft, 615-737-1025. Preds fans, we will have a Andrew Burnett conversation for you coming up here in just a few minutes, so make sure you tuned in for that. So, Joe, we talked with Charles yesterday about the quarterbacks in the draft, but also another position that is clearly of need with the Tennessee Titans, and that is wide receiver. Who in the world is the quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Kyle McCord, whoever they end up getting in the draft? Who are they throwing the ball to? Right now it's Calvin Ridley. It's Van Jefferson on the roster, and we're talking about Bryce Oliver a whole lot this offseason based on somebody who has not really done anything yet. So a lot of Bryce Oliver conversations going on out there. That's basically what your receiving room looks like.
B.O.,
right now.
baby.
Yeah. So
if he makes it big, B.O.
Yeah.
B.O.
Could do that. That would be nice. Real nice. So how will the Titans find an impactful wide receiver? That is kind of my question about that room right now. You've got Ridley, and it's good to have Ridley. And I think in actuality in today's NFL, he's probably a number 2 on this team. He's going to have to be the number 1 by far, based on the way things are currently set up right now. So most years you can find really impactful receivers in the draft. And lately, in many cases in the draft, there have been some elite wide receivers that have been coming from the college ranks to the pros. And we asked Charles about that and how that relates to this year's class yesterday on the program. Here's what Charles Robinson had to say.
There's just not the elite guys at the top. I think that's the one sort of difference is that you've particularly last couple of years, the classes have been so good. It was not difficult to find some elite level players at the top of the draft from a wideout perspective. This time it's a little bit different because you have one guy, excuse me, in Travis Hunter, who arguably could be wide receiver 1, who didn't spend the bulk of his time in college really refining that part of his game. I think, he by far, he was more involved with being in the defensive meetings and being a more refined corner. And then yet he went out there as a wide receiver, maybe didn't run the most polished routes, maybe didn't do all these different things perfectly, but put out enough of an athletic profile and then the tape to lead some evaluators to go, if he said today, I'm going to be a wide receiver, he automatically becomes wide receiver 1 in the class.
So that was Charles yesterday on the wide receiver class. So it's interesting, he makes the case that Travis Hunter, who we don't even know is going to play wide receiver in the NFL, could be wide receiver 1 in this class. He brought up Ted McMillan, that there's questions around him in terms of not only how fast is he, like how explosive can he be at the NFL level, but, Charles brought up an example yesterday too of, does he actually love ball? Getting back into that conversation. Like apparently there's some audio out there of him talking about not watching film, and that has concerned some NFL teams out there. So there's questions with some of the top guys in the draft. I'm not as worried about the top guys, Joe, because if it goes the way we think it's going to go, then the Titans are going to draft those guys anyway because they're drafting a quarterback. Right. But I guess the question is, can they actually find an impactful, game-changing wide receiver in this draft? Can they do that? I see a lot of Titans fans that want Luther Burden, and maybe that Luther Burden will drop to 35 overall. I kind of have my doubts that he's going to be there at 35, but if he is he that guy? Like, is Burden a guy that could be an impactful young wide receiver in the NFL? Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Like, could he be there at 35? Like, I don't think Matthew Golden's going to be there. Matthew Golden, I'd be surprised, given the way that he ran at the combine, if he's there around there. So I guess my question is, can you get both? Like, can you get your franchise quarterback and also your foundational young building block at wide receiver that, frankly, this team has been looking for since A.J. Brown?
Yeah, make the right choice. Yeah. A.J. Brown was 51, 52? Yeah, I didn't like when – it's not like going into that draft, everybody's like, that guy is coming right in and he is just going to be, so they
didn't take long, though.
Like,
watching him at practice, you're like, good gracious, look at this dude.
Yeah. And again, he was great at Ole Miss, but sometimes you just don't know how some of these guys are going to come in and make a difference or not. Again, I'll keep talking about the Detroit Lions today. I got Lions on the brain, but Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. My God, nobody thought that guy was going to do what he's done, obviously, or he wouldn't have gone in the 4th round. So yeah, make a good choice. There's going to be some receivers after they pick that make an impact, right? So get one of those guys.
Yeah,
I definitely think that at 35 you can get one. Yeah, the Burden thing is interesting. I would tend to agree with you. I don't think he lasts that long, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's right in the range of where there's a run on receivers. So it might not be too far. And look, I do subscribe to the idea that 35, if the Titans want to do if they're not moving, 35 has got to be a real consideration if somebody's got someone they really want there to trade back.
Yeah.
Just because you need but then if you do that, well, then you may not get that guy, but you may get, an edge. And a good receiver.
Well, you bring up edge, like we've talked with TD about this. Like if you want an impactful edge, you might have to pick him at 35. Like we've gone through like the history of the draft. It's rare to find guys that come into the league at edge rusher that you find later in the draft. It's not impossible, but it's rare that happens. So a couple of different questions for you on that front. Let's say you get to pick 35 and there's, whether it's Burden or somebody else, there are some wide receivers that you want that are there. There are also some edge rushers that you want that are there, but there's heavy interest in somebody trading up and you moving back and collecting more picks. Like, how do you weigh all that if you're the Titans? And I guess here's the follow-up to that, specifically to receiver. Does it matter to you what type of receiver they are? Because frankly, like I look at the Titans receiving room right now and they need everybody. Like they need all different types of receivers. So like, if it's a slot guy, if it's an inside guy, if it's an outside guy, like does it matter to you specifically which type of guy they're targeting with that high of a pick at wide receiver?
No, I just think it just has to be if you have a great slot receiver, again, Amon-Ra, he's not an outside guy. He does everything. You can do anything with that guy, but mostly you are always going to move the chains with him, or obviously a burner, a big physical guy. I don't think so. I think it matters, like just that you have someone who makes a difference. And yeah, if you're trading back, is a guy like a Jaden Higgins from Iowa State going to be back a little bit? At edge, I'm looking at like the top 100 picks right now. Josiah Stewart from Michigan is a guy who probably goes mid-late 2nd round type thing. How much do you value him over some of those guys, or how do you compare him to some of those guys higher in the draft? So much of it is Trey Harris from Ole Miss. How do you compare him to some of these guys who are expected to go before him? If you think it's pretty flat and pretty level for a while, then heck yes, trade back. But then, teams have their guy, right? They have their guy, and it's like, we can get our guy here. Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. There's a guy who, first of all, just an amazing name. Who you can get probably late 2nd, maybe into the early 3rd if you got into the 3rd.
Yeah.
By trading back. It's so much of it just depends on Kyle Kennard from South Carolina,
who I love.
Tez Johnson from Oregon.
I'm worried about him.
Oh yeah, he's slight.
He's so small.
He's a little slight. Yeah, Isaiah Bond, I know there's all this character stuff going on now with him, but these are some of the guys who you're probably going to be relegated to if you move back. But again, you might get both things.
Yeah.
So are both things more valuable than, oh my God, Luther Burden is our guy, or whoever would be at 35? Let's say Burden's gone. Who might be there at 35?
Or could Ibuka be there?
Yeah,
or
Ibuka,
or on the edge rusher side of things, like would Landon Jackson be there? Like, do you look at Landon Jackson out of Arkansas and say, yeah, we just feel like we got to have that guy coming off the edge over there on the defensive side of things.
6'6", 273.
Yeah,
he's an intriguing. He's a hell of a football player. Now, exactly, that's the thing. It's like, okay, I love this guy. We have to take him, or actually, we could take Landon Jackson here, or we can go back and we can get both things. It's so much of it is just how much you.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to believe if you have the higher caliber of players is pretty worthwhile. But again, you just look through the draft year after year. There's just always guys who go later that are like, wow, how the heck did that guy go in the third or fourth?
Well, I mean, look, what do you do if you're the Titans? I'm really interested to see how this part of it goes beyond just the fact that he played for Tennessee. But what if James Pierce is there at 35? What do you do if you're the Titans there? It'd be hard for me to pass up on that based on the talent.
Too talented to not, in my opinion. Too talented to not. There's a difference between, sometimes guys have their eyes on the NFL in college, and so it doesn't go well. Well, now you're in the NFL.
Right.
So if it's just a coachability thing and all that, man, I think the talent's too good.
I mean, the easy answer from what you've thrown out there to me on the surface would always be, well, yeah, just trade back and try to get both. But sometimes there's a player that's available that makes it really hard to do that because if you're trading back, that player's probably not going to be there by the time your next pick comes around.
So it's almost better if they just go right before you. You didn't trade up because you can't trade up. And then it's like, okay.
Exactly. Well, darn, we just missed on him.
So let's go back if possible.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on wide receiver, edge rusher for the Titans, plus some Predators thoughts to get into. They got shellacked last night in Columbus. We are mercifully getting to the end of the regular season here with the local professional hockey team. I've got a question to throw out to Preds fans that we'll get to as well coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/getitall. We're going to get into the Preds here in just a minute. I do want to address this from Chris on the text line real quick because I don't really know what you want us to do. Like Chris says, so tired of you guys pumping up these quarterbacks. They're not worthy of the first pick. Well, what exactly do you want us to do? Like, first off,
them up.
I think you and I, throughout this process that has now been going on months, and thank God we are mercifully getting to the end of this at the end of this month when the draft is done. I'm with all of you who have texted us the last few days that say they need to move up the draft by a month. You will not get any arguments from me. Yes, I am totally with you. But like, I think you and I have made it pretty clear where we stand on these quarterbacks. I don't love them. Like, I'm not sitting here in love with Cam Ward. I'm not in love with Shedeur Sanders. Like, I'm not convinced personally that either one of those guys are going to be long-term franchise answers at the quarterback spot. But, however, like, I also recognize that it's pretty likely that one of them are going to the Titans, and if not, they're both going pretty high in the draft. So, like, what do you want us to do? Just not talk about it? Do you want us to just say, well, I know Joe and I don't love these quarterbacks, so because Joe and I don't love these quarterbacks, we're just going to totally ignore that they exist and the possibility that they're going to the Titans.
Yeah, be like Vladimir Putin's state radio. They will not take the quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said a million times, Chris, I would go up to the podium and I would say, Travis Hunter, thank you, and be happy. And that's it. I've said that 10,000 times, but they're probably taking a quarterback. Someone's taking Cam Ward first, probably.
Yeah.
Will it be the Titans?
I mean, guess who holds the first pick right now?
Yeah. That would tend to warrant conversation.
So, I mean,
yeah, man.
I understand that if you don't look, there are plenty of you who don't want to take a quarterback. That's fine. I mean, I think I'm largely with you, but I can't ignore the reality of what may happen here with the Titans. There is some quarterback stuff from Diana Rossini that we're going to get into a little bit later in the program. Also, some interesting comments from Trevor Maddich on the Will Levis front yesterday on Stilly and Company that we will also get into coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. I do want to address Preds fans right now. We're getting close to the end here, Joe. It is a shame that we're sitting here, at the beginning of April with this team, heading into this year, Joe. I thought we'd be sitting here on April the 2nd, and we'd be talking about, of course, the draft coming up with the Titans, but gearing up for a playoff run here for Nashville. And clearly that's not going to happen with the Predators. They get beat 8-4 last night. They're playing out the string here. It's been rough to watch as of late. They've lost 4 in a row, and it's basically like crawling through sand to get through the end right now. That's what it feels like to me watching it. So I can imagine what it feels like to them. My question is, if you're a Predators fan, I think a lot of Predators fans are kind of with me there in terms of let's just get to the end of this thing. Let's get to the draft lottery, and let's see exactly where they end up here. Which, by the way, they're looking like they're going to be in pretty good shape to at least end up with the top 3 picks. So we'll see what happens on that front. My question is, what's your reaction going to be if Barry Trotz does not make a coaching change this summer? I think for a lot of Predators fans, they just assume that a coaching change is coming, that when the regular season ends, that whether it's a couple days later or a week or 2 later, whatever it is, that Barry Trotz is going to come out with a statement saying, we've relieved Andrew Burdett of his coaching duties, and we've begun the process of looking for a new coach. And that may happen. I mean, I tend to think when you have a season that's gone off the rails as much as this one has, in professional sports and specifically this sport, the coach ends up being the one that pays the price. So my likelihood is just my gut feeling that probably will happen. But I don't feel 100% about it based on some of the things that Barry Trotz has said throughout this process. So what is your reaction going to be? And what will you think of the direction here for the organization if Andrew Burnett is back as head coach next year? That's my question today for Predators fans.
I will say this for Preds fans. I think if you have paid close attention, because Barry Trotz talks a lot. He talks weekly to Jared. He's been available to local media. I mean, if you've paid close attention and you're shocked if he doesn't fire him, then I have to question whether you've paid close attention. So like I understand that traditionally, I guess you look at this whole situation and it's like, oh yeah, the coach is gone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but this is, I mean, again, I have to take Barry Trotz at his word. I mean, this is a different situation. Barry Trotz is a different GM, and that may prove to be not great. We're going to see with Barry Trotz moving forward. Obviously, it went totally downhill this year, but I don't see how you could take all this in and then be completely convinced that it's happening. I guess I'm probably like, I mean, I don't know. I'm probably in the 50-50 range on this.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It's hard for me to get over the way that this is ending here. Like, it's not that they're not playing hard, because I think they are. Right now, I just think their roster is terrible. Like, I just think they're not very good right now. So, I mean, they got beat 8-4 last night. Saros was bad. Defense was bad. Like, it could be rough. It already is. It could be rough down the stretch. I mean, they got Dallas coming up Thursday. They get Dallas again later this year.
By the way, real quick, I could not tell effort on the cartoon last night.
You couldn't?
I watched the animated. I wasn't. I mean, they looked happy, kind of out there,
jovial
in the cartoon,
yeah,
world. So I couldn't really assess effort all that well.
Well, there were a few close-up shots on the actual broadcast last night, particularly late in the game when there's some verbal disagreements going on out there that I'm glad they did not show on the kids' broadcast.
By the way,
Steven Stamkos was fired up. So was Philip Forsberg, and so was Andrew Burnett, all in the span of about 6 seconds. It's like, wow, there's a lot of language flying around out there.
Who at who?
They're all at the officials. Every one of
them. That's interesting. Also, real quick, Max and C-Mace, the in unison fang fingers, very nice touch on the broadcast.
Good stuff last night on the animated broadcast. Yeah, I'm not convinced that he will get fired. If you force me to choose right now, I would say yes, just based on. I just think it's hard to go through a season like this with the expectations being what they were, and frankly, with the contract situation being what it is moving forward. And I think it's going to be hard to really change the equation that much on what your roster looks like. I think rather than trying to worry about changing all that, I think sometimes it's just easier to change the coach, and that could be where they're headed after this year. Now, Barry Trotz, I've said this for a long time. Barry Trotz is going to be more patient than most. I think he probably already has been more patient than most general managers when it comes to the coach.
Yeah.
And I get that from how he came up. David Poile was extremely patient with him, and it ended up working out, and it paid off, and he became eventually a Stanley Cup champion out of all that in Washington. So I'm not going to be stunned if Andrew Burnett is back next year. I just do wonder what the reaction from the fan base at large would be on that front. Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Ryan to the program. Ryan, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he's not fired. I think Trotz is trying to see what the coaching market might be before he pulls the trigger. Because I'd say if Pittsburgh fires Mike Sullivan, that's got to be your new head coach. Or I honestly, with how veteran of a roster we have, I would probably maybe see if Laviolette and Housley would want to come back, especially Housley, because when we had Housley as assistant coach and power play coach, Preds had one of the lethal power plays in the league, and we didn't have much back then to really do anything with. And now you have a power play specialist like Stamkos and Marchessault that could be even more deadlier for him to play with.
Yep, thanks for the call, Ryan. Appreciate it. We'll take your thoughts on the coaching front for the Predators. Already some thoughts rolling in the text line that we'll get to coming up next. What's your reaction going to be if Trotz does not move on from Andrew Burnett this summer? This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, taking your thoughts on the Predators. Throwing the question out there. Preds fans, what will your reaction be if the Predators do not move on from Andrew Brunette this offseason, which I do think is a possibility. Taking your thoughts on that. We got a lot of different thoughts to get to. Let's start on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Frank to the program. Frank, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I'd be pretty ticked off if Barry Trotz doesn't fire Andrew Brunette. Just because, I mean, if he wants, it sounds pretty clear to me that he wants this team to try and be competitive again next year, and that's all you really can do. And I just think clearly it's not working with them. And I mean, if he wants the team to get younger too, you look at all the young guys we had. Pretty much all of them regressed. I mean, I think if you keep them on, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And that's just the definition of insanity.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Frank. Appreciate it. A lot of text basically to that regard on the text line. We do have one from Opie on the text line that says, Trotz needs to be patient. Give him another offseason, 20 games to start next year. I just don't want the Preds to seem as dysfunctional as the Titans are. This from Opie. On the text line.
That's the standard.
That is the standard.
Rebecca says if Barry keeps them, they both get one more year, and in a year we need a GM too. Same thing here from Jesse. I hope Bruno does stay, and it's just like this year, so they both go next year. So that's sort of the increasing sentiment, I'd say. Dissatisfaction with Trotz, which is fair.
Look, when the year's gone this poorly, everything's fair.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's no doubt about that. I would say this. I don't think there's any scenario. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. I don't think there's any scenario where they're bringing Andrew Brunette back and he gets all of next year no matter what. Like, it's important if they do bring him back, he cannot have a similar start to the season that he's had the last 2 years. If he does, I just don't know how you make it through that. I don't know how you would make it through 3 consecutive years of starting a season really poorly. Like, I think the first year to some degree is explainable. Number one, given the roster, and number two, given the new system. Last year, a little bit less explainable, this year, a little bit less explainable. If you do it again next year, then that tells me that you don't really have a whole lot of answers to start a season. And look, if you're a Predators fan, I think that's also what you've been looking for. Now, like, look, I mean, we've all known that this season has been over for a while. The players have known it. They got officially eliminated from the playoffs last week, Joe. And I thought Ryan O'Reilly's comment after that was pretty telling. He's like, oh, yeah, it feels like we got eliminated a long time ago. That's basically what he said. He's like, yeah, we feel like we've been eliminated for a long time, which if you watch this team all year, you feel the same way. Like, it almost feels like they've been eliminated since late October when they started 0-5 and have been chasing it ever since. So one thing that has not really happened that I think it depends on your perspective, because they have had some different injuries that have come along since then, but there's never really been an answer. Like, Andrew Brunette has never really found an answer this year where you can look at it and say, oh, well, we feel pretty good about the way the whole group is building heading into next year. That hasn't happened. I mean, right now they're just as bad, if not worse, as they've been at any point this year. And certainly injuries are part of that now when you're missing as many guys as they are. Like, Yossi, Sissons, Lazan, Marchessault are all out last night. They're missing a lot of guys. But there's not really been an answer at any point this year, which I do think makes it a way tougher sell to keep Brunette heading into next year.
Right. And again, that gets into like what you said earlier, which is if you can't really make massive roster changes, which I don't see it. Now, maybe there's some trade this summer that blows us all away. And it's like, I never thought that could be possible, but for the most part, it's going to be the core is coming back. So if that's the case, then I think it's a harder sell to go another year with them.
Well, and here's the other thing. I think there's an assumption, and it may end up playing out this way, but I think there's an assumption that if they end up getting a top 3 pick and they end up with one of these 2 centermen that we've talked about, be that a James Higgins or a Michael Misa, that those guys are coming in next year and are going to play and are playing in the top 6. And that might happen. I think what's also a possibility is like if they drafted James Higgins, he goes back to college next year and plays in college. And then maybe a year from now, he's ready to play in the NHL. Or if they draft Michael Misa, that he's not quite ready to play in the NHL and he goes back to junior. And then a year from now, he's back in. I don't know that. Like both of those guys may say, you know what? We're ready to play in the league. And the Predators may look at it and say they can come help us right now. I don't think either one of those guys are guaranteed to be in the NHL next year. Now, if they draft the defenseman, Schaefer, he's going to be in the league next year.
But yeah, so, you can't, you're not going to have instant massive impact on your team. I mean, I suppose that's the thing. They have need in the back end.
They got need everywhere.
They've got need. But
other than I guess in goal.
The endless search for a centerman though is
I feel like if you have the opportunity to select one of those centermen, you almost have to if you're Barry Trotz.
Never get that opportunity. They never do.
Right.
Never have.
Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Marshall to the program. Marshall, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. So I've always kind of defined a good coach as one who could manage his players well. And as we all know, the Predators have an incredible roster, an incredible amount of talent. And Andrew Burnett, it just does not know how to manage them well. And we see little snippets here and there because the Predators beat these teams periodically who they have no business beating. And we see the same problem with the Titans, really. So whether or not he should go, I think I had enough of him. I think it was about mid-December, maybe late November when we played Calgary on the road. I like the guy, but the fact is he's not managing his players well. Trotz, does he need to go? I don't know. I don't think so. I like the guy, but I think Bruno for sure needs to.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks. Bye.
Appreciate it, Marshall. Here's one thing I'll say on all that. The Predators, and this is, I think, a big part of the identification over the summer of what needs to take place. And, based on your answer to this, I think how you try to attack the summer. The Predators do have a lot of names on their team, right?
Exactly. They have a lot of achievement. They have an incredible amount of achievement, not necessarily talent.
They have a lot of names. They have a lot of guys who have done a lot of winning and have played at a high level on their team. Stamkos, Marchessault, Yossi, Forsberg. We can go up and down the list. O'Reilly. They also have a lot of old guys. So how much talent do they still have? Like, is this actually a talented roster? I mean, from a pure ability standpoint, all those guys have talent. Are they still capable of being high-level NHL players? That's what you have to determine. If the answer is yes, and you believe it's the coach holding them back, well, then there's your answer as to what to do with Andrew Burnett. If the answer is, well, these guys, in some cases, have been elite players in the NHL who kind of look like they're on the other side of it right now, then that's a whole different problem to address this offseason.
Yeah, so then it points more to Trotz. Also see what we've talked about before, some in the text line, which is this system seems to be there's so much talk about the system, and it seems to be this, at times difficult to grasp or at times difficult to master and really play it the way you need to play it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've said many times, like, system can be so overrated, but I mean, his system is like it's a big deal, and obviously it doesn't fit. How much I do believe in the general idea in sports of good coaching, of you fit what your system is to your player's strengths. Has he done that well enough?
Well, I don't think he's done it well enough. Clearly, they've tried to make some changes to the system, and they've tried to simplify some things. And look, I think looking at this team, Andrew Burnett likes to play high pace, get the puck up the ice as quickly as possible. And I do think it's fair to ask, like, do they actually have the horses to do that right now? Like, I think everything from that standpoint and the way that they play has to be under evaluation. One thing I'll also say, like, if you are going to move on from him as coach, like, I do think you need to have somebody else pretty clearly in mind. Like, I don't love the idea of just being like, well, let's fire him and then let's hope that somebody comes free out there. Like, we had a caller earlier bring up Sullivan. I don't know what's going to happen with Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh, but he would be kind of the type of guy that I'd be like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Like, I could see you making a move.
He'll be
he becomes available.
He will be somewhere. You know, if he'll be somewhere quickly.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. We will get back into this conversation probably tomorrow here on the show. There's, look, it's going to be a grind to get through the end of the regular season here. I've been impressed. Like, the crowds have still been pretty good at Bridgestone, and people are holding on right now. Like, I can tell you, just walking in the room after, everybody can feel it. It's a grind to get through this thing here. So we'll see what that looks like. But going to be a very interesting offseason that is now just a couple of weeks away. Their last game is April 16th. So we're getting to the prime time here of the end of the regular season, and then we'll find out pretty quickly what Barry Trotz wants to do on the coaching front. We got some quarterback discussion to get into coming up next, including some interesting comments from Diana Rossini that we just uncovered that are very interesting as it relates to the Tennessee Titans and what could happen with the number 1 overall pick. We'll get into that coming up next. Paul Kuharsky will be with us next hour as well to get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com will be with us later in the program, later this hour. PK will be with us, so make sure you're tuned in for that. We got a lot of things on the Titans front to get into with him. Joe, a lot of conversation around what the Titans are going to do at quarterback, and interesting discussion between Diana Rossini and Chase Daniel on their football podcast they do at The Athletic regarding the Titans, the number 1 pick, and the large degree of holes that they have on this roster and what needs to be done to fill them. Some interesting thoughts from Rossini specifically. Here's what Diana Rossini had to say about the Titans and the trepidation there with some in the organization about what to do with the number 1 overall pick.
What would it take? What would it take, Diana, for them to move off?
I think it's good business for them to keep this open. I think that's the point.
What would it take for them to move off the pick?
I don't know. They won't answer that. They won't tell you.
It would have to be a ton.
Correct. I mean, this is an organization that is trying to completely revamp and rebuild. They are tearing it down. They did not have a good free agency last year. They don't have they have so many questions that need answers and a lot of positions to fill. So I understand the argument from some in the building that I know would like to trade out because they want to build, but they've lived in a quarterback.
No,
they've lived in this quarterback situation where they don't have a lot of answers for a while. But I'd put it like this. I'm not sure if there's conviction yet. And that was my sense. I'm not feeling this conviction from Tennessee just yet. It seems, I mean, look, we saw Brian Callahan at the workout and it's lights out. Like he was so happy and loved what he loved what he saw. I'm just not feeling that yet. It's going to change. I'm just saying for right now.
So
conviction, that's your word.
That's my word.
That's your word.
Have some of that DVD. I'm interested to see, number 1, does that change moving forward here? But it was very interesting to hear Rossini there talk about how, she knows some people in the building that would like to trade out.
There you go.
Now, who is that? I don't know. That's where you get into like, okay, well, in the building, what does that mean?
Well, it's yeah. I
don't think she's talking about.
She's not talking about
the chef.
Exactly. The Uncrustables arranger. No, I think that's we're talking. I mean, look, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? The Titans and it's interesting because you have Brinker at the top. You obviously now you have Borgonzi at GM, but then you also bring in the 2 guys, McKenzie and Ziegler, right? Who have had experience, and then obviously you also have Callahan. So it's one of those people.
You would think
more than one of those people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very interested to talk to PK about this, but that's a very interesting nugget. And the lack of conviction. It's interesting because at the end, Diana said, it'll get there. So I mean, maybe but.
Well, I mean, there's going to be conviction at some point, one way or the other.
At some point, you're going to make a pick, and then as all teams do, you're going to make a pick and say, this was always what we were going to do.
Right.
We knew it all along. Cam Ward was the number 1 player on our board from the very first day. In fact, before he even transferred from Incarnate Word, we knew at our various jobs previously, he was going to be our quarterback.
Yeah, it does kind of eventually get to that point.
Yeah, they'll all say that stuff. But yeah, if you're getting to that point, you're getting to conviction. Yeah, it means that there's reasons to not have it.
Well, it kind of lines up with what we've been talking about the last few days of, okay, if it's as simple as Cam Ward is your guy no matter what, then would you really be talking about being open for business for a trade, right? Like, the big story coming out of the owners meeting yesterday, and still he spent a lot of time on this, was Joe Shane and Mike Borgonzi having coffee together, which again shows you how the NFL can dominate an offseason when you're talking about 2 general managers having coffee together at the owners meetings. But they had coffee together and were chatting in front of everybody at the owners meeting. So that was the big thing coming out of there yesterday is, the Titans and the Giants working out a deal for number 1 overall. Well, you've talked about it with the the Rappaport tweets and the Schefter tweets coming from, we would assume, the Titans about how, hey, it's the offer. It's going to take a heck of an offer to get the Titans out of this here. Like, that's not coming from people's agents. Like, that's coming from the Titans. So clearly they still are making it known that they are open to listening. And we talked about that. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that also doesn't guarantee that they're not taking Cam Ward at number one. But it does show you, when you piece all of this together, that it doesn't seem like it's just some slam dunk, no matter what, Cam Ward is our guy.
Yeah, which matches up with the evaluation of him, which matches up with, again, go through the whole process. Charles reiterated again yesterday. He came out of Indy thinking, they're probably not going to take Ward. It's just, so, and that gets into, and I know sometimes with listeners, fans are like, okay, but like, who said that? I mean, I even said it to Charles, like I was kind of pushing him on that. But this is what happens in this league, is that, people in organizations do talk to people in other organizations who are their friends, and then media gets into that too. I mean, there's misinformation, and then there's sort of like stuff that you wouldn't necessarily report because it's not like from the GM or the head coach or owner of a team, but people who are in the know, and you come away with feelings on that. And I think this all makes sense, that right now they'd be sitting there like, basically, well, if we have to take him, he could be great. It's possible. But yeah, we'll wait for some offers. Yeah. Make us an amazing offer. Someone else, please love him more than we love him, because we have so many other needs, and we're not sure that he is that guy. I mean, who would be sure? Anybody saying they're sure is lying right now.
I would agree. Craig says, did they have coffee at the same Starbucks that fight took place during the combine? Would have had to have been a different one, this one in Florida, but I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, this is at the owners' meetings.
Was Jordan Schultz hanging around?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's been tweeting a lot. Like Gover says, that podcast recorded in aviary. Yes, it was definitely in a nice garden setting with some birds chirping.
It's a lovely time of year in Florida.
Yes, indeed.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Some more comments to get to coming up next, this time from Trevor Maddich on Stilly and Company yesterday, also related to the Titans quarterback position, but not the guy you're thinking. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on Gwinnett. Pregame beginning at 9:50. First pitch at 10:05. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Robby and Rexrode here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com will be with us later in the program. You're coming up here in just a few minutes. So interesting comments from Diana Rossini that we'll get into with PK a little bit later in the show that we just played. Also some interesting comments from Trevor Maddich yesterday on Stillman and Company as it relates to Will Levis and maybe the shake that he got here with the Tennessee Titans. Here's what Trevor Maddich had to say yesterday afternoon on Stillman and Company.
This offensive line went from heinous as a group to what's expected to be a very solid group, something that Will Levis has not had a chance to work with. And then his receivers and tight ends have been one of the most abysmal as a group since Levis has been thrown out here in the NFL. He's got no protection. He's got negative protection. He's got horrific protection. And receivers that as a group are not getting open and not making plays for him. And he's trying to make plays, but making mistakes on the way. And because of that, Levis has not had a chance to show what he can do. I think if with the improvement in the offensive line, if they could bring in some good young receivers to add to Calvin Ridley, Levis, it might end up being as good a quarterback as Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward will be in the NFL. I don't think they should bail on Levis right now because I don't think they have any idea how good Levis can be. And I think the fact that the label that's been hung around his neck that is more of the offensive line and the receivers than it ever was him is totally unfair to Will Levis. And I would love to see him have a chance to compete for that starting job with better people around him.
So that was Trevor Maddich yesterday on with Stillman.
Spicy.
Joe, your thoughts on what Maddich had to say there?
Well, as he's saying that, I'm trying to remember. I'm not able to listen to him all the time, but I catch it a fair amount on Stilly's show. And I'm trying to remember, was he strongly defending Levis all last season like that? I don't
recall that.
I don't recall that either. But, I listened to it yesterday. I'm like, whoa, gee whiz, man. Now, look, the idea that Levis could be better than any rookie coming in, especially a rookie that's not, supposed to be great. I could buy that.
Sure.
Because that's what happens a lot is that quarterbacks come in the league and they're not good. It's way more often than not, actually. But I was a little bit taken aback by those comments. I'm probably a little higher on Levis than you are, probably was all last year. I do agree with you that I think he demonstrated enough. You brought up the Bengals game. He did have good games. He had a good game at Houston. He had good moments too, good stretches. I think there's something there.
Even in that game in Houston, he threw a pick six. But you're right, he did have a good game.
He did. Yes. I think there's something there. Again, I think that here's what I think Levis is. As I listen to that, and then I'm looking at this whole thing. I think Levis is a bet hedge, and I think that's why the Titans are not going to do anything. They wouldn't publicly do anything different anyway, but they're being pretty adamant, right? Like he's in the building, he's working hard, he's under contract, he could all that stuff. Well, look, they may get an offer that they like. They may bail on Cam Ward. They may not be able to get a quarterback, and even if they can't get one of the top two, you could talk about Shug, or you could talk about Jackson Dart or whatever, but even if they do like them, they may not be able to get them. And they may be sitting there with, Allen, Boyle, and Levis, and then you're damn well sure he's starting. So, I think that are you not?
Brian Callahan said the other day that Brandon Allen is a good quarterback, and he feels like he does not get the respect that he deserves.
All right. Well, then there you go. There's your competition. Get excited for camp, Titans fans. Levis, Allen, with some attaboys from Tim Boyle.
That's pretty much how that
in the quarterback room. if it goes a certain way where they get the offer, they get out, they can't draft a quarterback, that's why you keep Levis. So if it works out the other way, I think maybe the Levis trade that we've talked about may have to wait until like draft weekend.
Yeah. Well,
if they do get the quarterback.
Right. I mean, all of this is operating under the assumption that they're taking a quarterback at some point. If they don't, then it could be a special year next year for them, just based on the way that quarterback room is right now. I mean, look, it was an impassioned defense of Levis from Matic there. The larger point of what he's saying, I can see where he's coming from. Like, we all know the offensive line has been abysmal, and we all know that the conditions for Levis haven't been good. Now, where I start to disagree with what Matic had to say there was when he said the Titans couldn't have any idea whether or not Levis is good. Yeah. You can have an idea. He has played enough, and he has demonstrated enough on the field on NFL Sundays, sometimes because of the offensive line, but also sometimes independent of the offensive line, where there have been plenty of problems that have been Will Levis caused, not just offensive line caused. So I differ from Matic there. I don't buy that you can't have any idea as to whether or not he's been good. We would all agree, even those of us who have been out on Levis, we all recognize that the conditions around him have been terrible with the Titans.
Yeah, they can't have any idea. That's a real stretch to me.
Yeah. I mean,
got an idea. We all watched him. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't good.
Well, clearly, look, again, we'll see what they actually end up doing here and whether or not Cam Ward's a Titan or not. At the very least, the Titans are taking a long, hard, heavy look at quarterback, which shows you what Brian Callahan thinks of Will Levis, right? Like if Brian Callahan and this front office was convinced that Will Levis was going to be their guy moving forward, or at least even in the next year, then are you really taking this hard of a look at quarterbacks right now? So, no. I understand the conditions around him have been bad, and that's why you end up, in addition to just poor quarterback play, the conditions around him and how bad this roster is how you end up where they are with the number 1 overall pick and all the needs that they have. But the idea that we don't have an idea of what Levis can be in the NFL, I think is a little rich.
Yeah. Yeah, someone on the text line said that's a total 180 from what he was saying this season. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't remember thinking this year, man, Trevor Matich is really pro Levis. He keeps making excuses. I don't remember that. That's interesting. I'd actually like to know that from Stilly. Stilly, I know you're hate listening right now, obsessively, like you always do. Text in. Is this consistent with Trevor's takes on Levis from during the season?
Well, and again, going back to the next season thing, I'm with you. I don't think it's unrealistic to assume that Levis could be better right now than either a Ward or a Sanders coming in, right? Now, again, your hope would be that as the rookie year goes on for the quarterback and as he continues to develop, that you see, number one, some pretty marked improvement as the year goes on, and that long term, it's not close, and that the quarterback you're taking is substantially better than Will Levis. That would be the hope. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way immediately. But I don't think that's necessarily a take there that's all that abnormal.
Right. Texture says, we thought Malik sucked too, just saying. Then he rolled in town and schooled us under a new regime in different colors.
Well, again, beating the Titans is not necessarily a great accomplishment last year. Did you watch that team?
Is that Malik performance going to be just total mythology soon? Like he came in, threw 350 and 3, ran. Yeah. I mean, he made a few plays. Yeah.
He was good.
He was. He has entrenched himself as an NFL backup quarterback, which is pretty much the ceiling, and good for him.
I watched every snap that Malik played last year for the Packers. He was fine. It was not like it was some high level starting quarterback.
I mean, if you really want my take on Malik and Green Bay, I think that was an example of good coaching by your Matt LaFleur.
Sometimes he does that.
He took his skill set and he maximized it, which is what a good coach does.
Paul Kuharsky,
even if you hate him.
Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com is with us here on the program. We got a lot of things to get into with him on the Tennessee Titans. We'll start that next. Take your questions for PK throughout the remainder of the program. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/getitall. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us here on the program. Fresh off a trip to Florida. PK, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning. Good to be back. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be here.
Eggs, Pelissero, give us stories.
No exchange with Pelissero. Just like maybe a nod walking by.
Oh, just a nod. Huh?
It is a glorious sports writer convention. Too many people gathering there now. And while the Breakers is an amazing hotel, it does not really have a space that is ideal for the breakfast. They call it breakfast. Nobody's eating, but those half-hour sessions, which used to be hour sessions, which used to be 45-minute sessions with the coaches, that AFC one morning, NFC the other morning, was in a long, narrow room. Last time it was there, and now was in a portable tent. It's just too tight a space. I'm sure they have spaces that are big enough to accommodate it. They're just using those for something else, not us. So it's very hard. I don't know. I put on my ninja moves to leave Callahan and, edge around through 5 tables to get to Andy Reid to ask one question and then get back. I probably missed 3 Callahan questions. Did well to get a Reid question in quickly. But, weaving through that crowd and everything it's just not manageable. They obviously don't put a priority on it. But in Orlando and in Arizona, it's better facilitated. And then the great party they have, which is an unbelievable chance to schmooze with people from all over the league. They feared rain, and so they moved it from this amazing outdoor courtyard where everybody's in one place to inside where it was in 15 different places.
Was it hot in that room? Because Mike Tomlin looked like he just ran a marathon.
In the meme with the dude
Good
sleeping.
We got one guy asleep
My boy
over here.
Caboli over there.
And Tomlin's sweating.
That's a tough meme for that dude. I feel badly for him. It was warm. It was warm.
Jordan Schultz kick your ass?
I did not see Jordan Schultz.
Okay.
I do not
bad.
know for a fact that Jordan Schultz was present.
Okay. We were wondering about that all week. If there would be some sort of
I don't know
exchange.
if Jordan Schultz would know me. It would be fitting for Jordan Schultz's MO that he wouldn't know or care.
Figured out 3 days later
by facial recognition.
It's like, oh yeah, that's Kuharski. 3 days after it
He
happened.
seems aggressive. You better hope so.
I'm not worried.
So your large overarching takeaway from your conversations with Brinker, Borgonzi, and Brian Callahan as it relates to the number 1 pick and what could be coming here.
Well, I thought the most interesting thing, and it wasn't set up on a tee for Callahan. It was really in a conversation about what you learned from a guy transferring multiple times, was what he said about Cam Ward and the improvements that he made from one stop to the next stop to the next stop in terms of improvements in decision-making and accuracy, which, decision-making and accuracy are Cam Ward's issues, but they've also been the Titans' issues. They've also been very largely Will Levis's issues. And kind of unsolicited, he offered up that he's impressed by what Cam Ward has done in those departments through the transfers, that he's impressed by the progress that he's made there. I think that's the most detailed description of what the Titans think of Cam Ward as a player. And so I took that as telling. And you guys were talking about Diana Rossini's video report there about them being non-convicted. I think they're non-convicted on purpose. They're determined to do this entire process without reaching any conclusions until they're done with the Colorado guys on April 9th. Then they're going to come back and convene and let themselves decide, having served the process fairly in terms of giving everybody an equal chance and all of that. So certainly you can be falling in love with somebody, but they've prevented themselves from being all the way in love, talking like high school relationships here.
Like. Do you like or do you like them? Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, I understand.
They may have been past the "do you love me" note being passed to them, but they have not checked the box and given it back.
Yeah. I get the idea of go through that process. Okay. I think that's fine. There's also human nature of right. I mean,
but they've fought that.
And also Diana said there that there are people in the building who want to trade the pick, which I find interesting.
What level are those people? You were kind of asking that question. Right. I think that's important.
Yeah, but I mean, I very much don't believe it's just some rando who happens to be walking through the building.
No, it's I would think. Look, I can't pretend to know who it is. And could it be a McKenzie or a Ziegler? Yeah. I mean, hell, it could be a Borgonzi or a Brinker
or a Callahan. We got 5 possibilities.
Yeah. Well, but I think it could also be scouting staff, which expands the envelope a lot, or scouting staff saying that there's an element of one of those big 4 or 5.
Yeah, but I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised at all if you go through the whole thing here, Paul, and I just like you're talking about falling in love. I think I think the situation has almost forced you to really look at falling in love. It's like kind of like, well, here's your arranged marriage. He's not that bad,
I agree. I said this from there, like, we go from February really thinking about the trade thing. Well, now you're more like 3 weeks away. And, the idea of where Cam Ward fits with last year's draft class or the anticipation of next year's draft class. Well, the blinders really tighten now. Excuse the pun.
Tighten up.
And you're looking very specifically at this draft class and what you can do in this draft class with the premium position, right? All this stuff about where he fits with Caleb Williams or Nussmeier or all of that, all that stuff gets put on the outside, and you're very much just focused on now and this group of players. And it doesn't matter where he ranks amongst last year's quarterbacks or next year's quarterback. It's all about right now and what's in front of you. And, the discipline process and all this stuff they're talking about is great. But, and we've talked about this to a large degree, it take a hell of a discipline to pass on the guy who's largely, absolutely regarded as the best quarterback in the class when you're a quarterback needy team. Imagine the Titans trade out and they get Abdul Carter at 3. I think a lot of us close to this team would say, I see the rationale for them doing that. But they would get universally hammered for saying, hey, we're going back to Will Levis and we're passing on the best quarterback in this draft. America would say, look at the Titans. They're the worst team in the league, and they think they're smarter than everybody. They're passing on the best quarterback in the draft. And then every time the guy threw a touchdown pass this year and Will Levis threw an interception, they get hammered. Now, Twitter. I'm not saying they can't be disciplined and manage that, but that's a long play for a team that has a lot of people that have had short shelf life.
Well, it was interesting to read comments from Brinker down there that you had at paulkuharski.com talking about understanding where they are and the work that's going to be required here. You could tell when you hear Brinker talk, you hear Borgonzi talk, and Callahan, that the quote unquote disciplined approach has been, they've hammered that into themselves, that they're come hell or high water. That's the way we're going to try to do this. And we'll see what that ultimately ends up looking like on April 24th when the draft comes around. But that was kind of the one consistent message they kept hammering home all week.
And that they're determined not to sell any kind of, I think they acknowledge organizationally that they kind of oversold success last year. Certainly that Rand interview on Sirius where he said, we filled every spot on the depth chart on offense.
Checked every box.
Not just starters, but bench. we're not going to hear anything like that from them, and they're not going to do, beyond the high fives in the draft room when you get your guy, because the process is coming to an end. You're not going to see raised fists at the interview table. I think that was part of the not making the free agents available, which is kind of a misunderstanding there about it being a celebration versus just an introduction. I think there maybe was some communication disagreement on that, but they're very conscious of staying humble in this.
You're telling me that their rationale for not making people available is, we don't want to make it look like we're celebrating, so let's not let this person speak publicly to reporters. What? That's freaking stupid as hell.
I think there was some unfortunate thinking that did happen that included
unfortunate
an element,
thinking. Yes,
included
I would say
an element
so.
of that. Yeah.
Good God.
Jared on the YouTube chat says, if Robby put on glasses, I may not be able to tell him and PK apart.
We're going dome. We're doming it today, baby.
Of ball beauty on this
dome
program.
It up.
So where I was sitting during Callahan's breakfast, Pete Prisco was in the background. Pete Prisco of CBS Sports.
Ah, yes.
Bald and short.
Legend.
When he moved, Rob Domofsky, ESPN's Packers guy,
also bald,
replaced him. Also bald.
Great dome on Domofsky.
And when he moved, Pete Dougherty, another Green Bay writer who is bald, replaced him. I had a bald guy in the background the whole time, and I thought some people are going to think, how are you in the background of your own videos throughout this entire interview? And it was as if they had set up a rotation. All right, I got the first 10 minutes. You got the second 10 minutes. And just constant baldness in the back.
Like Kuharski's unbelievable. He's moving around all over the place.
You got body doubles everywhere. Hey, Jordan, go punch him. That's PK over there.
Jared also says PK and Rexrode agreeing on everything is disgusting. Argue about something already.
Still he says this?
No, just another Jared on YouTube.
Yeah.
I've been hanging around long enough. It's going to happen.
It'll happen
at some point.
I'll make something up if I have to.
Got the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. So have more to get into on the Titans front with PK throughout the program. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
The Uncrustables arranger. No, I think that's, we're talking. I mean, look, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Yes, exactly.
That's what happens when you fart around like that. You just
be like Vladimir Putin's state radio. They will not take the quarterback.
Yeah.
Don't put that idea in my head, Cam.
I've seen enough, guys. Couldn't beat Vrabel. Boy, to the bench.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. Paul Kuharski with us here on the program as well.
I feel like almost every day I say something that Nick finds worth saving for the rant later in that day.
I give Nick I
don't know
of
if
grief,
that's good or bad,
but I do think Nick is sharpening up his game.
Tightening up. Are you tighten up?
Tighten up.
Perhaps with people incoming that he feels put pressure on.
Maybe so.
So I'm going to. We don't have to spend the whole segment on this. I just want.
That's a heck of a wind up.
Well, I mean, we got Titans talk, or if you'd like to weigh in on this, we can certainly have this discussion. But I have to.
I have a brief point.
Well, yeah, it is brief.
Let me get in and out on this.
It is disgusting, and I had no idea. Like, I had no idea that this happened until I read the story yesterday. It is in The Athletic. It's by Katie Strang. She is an incredible investigative reporter and a proud graduate of Michigan State University School of Journalism, by the way. But I did not know, and PK, I'll use you as a test case here. This was all over my Twitter feed or whatever the hell, X feed for a few days. Like, I couldn't get away from it, which is like things like that now. It's just like, oh, why am I seeing this? I don't want to see this. This Ole Miss thing, you know what I'm talking about? Ole Miss, girlfriend, boyfriend, dad, all this crap. Okay, you're not aware. All right. Well,
I've been busy reading about the torpedo bat, which is also all over Twitter.
That's probably a good rant too, by the way. Okay, well, Robby, you know the story.
I'm aware.
Okay, so before this, we talked about it yesterday when this story came out. You'd seen this stuff, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so long story short, like there's some rumor out of nowhere, an Ole Miss that a girl and the girl slept with the boyfriend's dad. Okay. Like, who gives a crap, first of all?
Just a random girl or an athletic?
No,
random girl.
It's not a public figure. And this is where it gets just absolutely disgusting. So I had no idea, but, the Pat McAfee show made a big deal of this. I don't watch it. So I don't, I see clips.
He's busy getting ready to listen to Stilly at that time.
That's true.
Yeah. I don't even know I see the Aaron Rodgers stuff. So people who like Pat McAfee, good for you. Pat McAfee does fine on game day. You read this account of the conversation they had about this, again, about just some random internet rumor, nothing to it. And he goes through this whole thing to the point where Schefter's like, he's got Schefter on the show. So, okay, there's probably some good things to talk about there. He has any guest he wants on his show. And we're talking about this crap. And if you get more into this story, the stuff that's happened to her life since then, which is a total fake, made up rumor. She's still with the boyfriend. It's like, it's destroyed her life. I mean, it really, like if your life can be destroyed by internet people calling your grandparents and telling them your daughter is a piece of crap, for example, like attacking her life. And it only happens because someone like Pat freaking McAfee would take time out of his show and amplify this garbage. I mean, we never considered we saw it. I saw it. Did you ever consider, hey, let's talk about this on our show?
No.
Did anybody in this state? I mean, sometimes talk radio, our topics can be a little, we'll
talk about Cam Wardlaw.
A little farted up,
Yeah.
I mean, like, so, yeah, right. But I don't understand how you could be so irresponsible. And of course, Barstool got in it too. And apparently there was some St. Louis Doug Vaughn. You familiar with Doug Vaughn?
I'm not.
PK, are you familiar with anything that's happening in the world? Okay.
None of this stuff.
All right.
Mo Vaughn.
They make this huge deal out of this. And it's like, this is just because anybody could put anything on the internet and say, hey, look, why would you ever think to do that? And so she's suing McAfee. I don't know what'll happen with it. But like at some point, he needs to be reined in, man. How could you be that much of a moron?
That extends to the bigger problem. Once you reach a certain level of media, there is no reining you in. There is no boss. McAfee is bossless. Clay Travis is bossless. Adam Schefter is bossless. They direct their bosses pretty much. But
there's difference in those people. Clay Travis has his own company,
right? Well, Pat McAfee had his own company, and ESPN wanted it.
But he's had some issues with ESPN and some stuff.
A little bit, but he's won. He's won every time. He's gotten people fired.
Him and Stephen A. Smith don't particularly like each other.
Yeah. Well, Stephen A. Smith is bossless. Nobody's going in and telling Stephen A. Smith cool it on this.
You're bossless.
Or we don't like. I'm bossless.
You're above the law.
I have some responsibility on the kind of things that you're talking about. I mean, it's ridiculous. I agree with you entirely. But the problem is that they're so powerful that nobody could go in and tell them. If somebody goes in and tells McAfee, hey, this was irresponsible and you shouldn't do this, he'd be like, all right, whatever you say.
Well, and
then he'll do whatever he wants the next day.
Because he knows he's always got the threat in the background. If it ever gets, he can just leave. He can go back to doing his own thing.
All right. And a gambling company will sponsor the hell out of me, or, whoever. People are dying to have me. I've got audience. And the audience, quite frankly, that doesn't mind this.
Oh, no.
The ratings probably went up.
I mean, there's seriously like some of the quotes from this. It's unbelievable. The crap these idiots say on his band of idiots. And again, I don't watch the show. I think McAfee is good on game day. He's obviously a funny guy. I do want why is the appeal so high for his show? He has great guests. They suck up to his guests. Like I don't watch enough to.
I mean, they have. I don't watch it every day. I see a lot of clips. I mean, they do some funny stuff. This is a total missing of the mark by them.
The Lou Holtz thing.
The Lou Holtz thing is hilarious.
That was
like
funny.
they do some funny stuff. This is a big time miss by them.
But it really does at some point. Like there does need to be accountability. So maybe this lawsuit creates some. But I mean, you're right with what you're saying, PK, on the fact that he has all the leverage. But like. This is, I would invite anybody to read this, like the stuff that her life has gone through her life, just because again, someone put something on the internet.
But whose story are you reading? The Athletic?
Yes, this is
right,
Katie.
So you can read
story.
it. Yeah, read that story, but don't go back and watch the clip. You know what I'm saying? Because that only reinforces what McAfee's looking for, and that's the problem. So if you go now and say, well, I'm reading Katie's story and I want to see what this is all about, and you go back and watch the clip and the clip gets 100 million views on it, then McAfee says, well, this sells.
Yeah. You would think that he would look at this and at least be compelled to apologize for this one.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. The next hour with PK here on the program, talking all things Titans. We'll take your questions for PK on our text line. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us for the next hour, talking all things Tennessee Titans. We'll take your questions for PK on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. We were just talking about the placement of the coaches photo down there at the owners meetings. Nice job putting Vrabel and Callahan like right next to each other. Vrabel towering over him from behind. Good stuff.
I wonder if it's accidental when they map that out. It's like there's tournament matchups where the second round is Patino against Calipari.
Yeah, right. Well, Vrabel had a big smile on his face, kind of laughing, and Callahan is looking off into the 1,000-yard stare, but not into the camera. I have this imaginary conversation where Vrabel's like, "Hey, Callie, how's Amy doing?" And then they take the picture.
Totally conceivable.
Any sign of Amy at the owners meeting?
She's there. Okay. She's there for sure, but I didn't see her. I mean, but I didn't see Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones goes to those things wanting to be seen.
He's saying dumb stuff to somebody right now. Oh, I don't know who Micah Parsons' agent is.
The funniest Cowboys storyline there is like Brian Schottenheimer is probably the least recognizable coach in the NFL. Could you pick him out of a lineup right now?
No way. Not a chance.
Only because he had that kind of strange presser when he was hired. But before that, no way.
I mean, how amazing is that if you think about who the Dallas Cowboys are and what? I mean, Dave Campo had that.
I was going to say Dave Campo.
Dave Campo had that too, but you would have thought that Jerry got like, hey, the Dave Campo thing wasn't so good for
Jerry
us.
likes his coaches to be anonymous. So we all talk about Jerry.
He does.
Except when they suck, which is forever.
The Jimmy Johnson, Bill Parcells eras were pretty good compared to.
Yeah.
Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Ed from New Jersey. Ed, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning, gentlemen. So I got to thinking, and as my family would warn me, that's dangerous. But this is a career shaping decision, obviously, for a GM. And I was thinking about two scenarios, and I'm wondering what's more riskier. If you were the GM right now, is taking a quarterback at 1 and he busts more risky than passing a quarterback at 1 and he turns out to be great? So if you guys were in that chair, what would you think, as far as your career is concerned, what would be the less riskier option?
Well, I mean, if you take him and he turns out, if you don't take him and he turns out to be great, you're going to get killed, and that's really bad for your career. Plenty of people have taken a guy who turns out not to be good, and especially if he's your first guy, survived it. I mean, if Mike Borgonzi takes Cam Ward and he turns out not to be good, does he get a chance at a second quarterback? I mean, it depends.
If Robert Irsay were his boss, I guess he'd get a bunch.
It depends on what else he does for the franchise. But
John Robinson never got a chance to draft one.
Yeah, I would think, but he had a long term. I would think the better scenario for Borgonzi is to take him. Than for him to turn into a great player somewhere else.
See, I would argue the other way because
Yeah.
I think at least if you don't take him and he ends up being great elsewhere, you still have the opportunity to take your guy at some point, whether it's next year or whenever that would be. Now, if all things are equal and you don't take the guy and then you end up taking somebody next year and Cam Ward turns out to be great, that's not a great spot.
I'm just going with the math of he's probably not going to be great. They're all probably not going to be great. So I'll go ahead and go with the option where him not being great, which is way more likely, doesn't hurt me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's not what this guy's asking, though. The guy's asking he's here and he's bad, or he's somewhere else and he's great. Which one?
Yeah. Sure.
Neither one of them are great.
I lost sight of Ed's call. My fault.
And quite frankly, guys, and I think you'll agree with me here, this is probably how it goes. If he's here, they screw him up. That's what happens. And if he goes somewhere else, he'll be
amazing.
I mean, that sucks for the Titans fans. That sucks for the Titans. But that's how things work here to a degree.
I mean, there is something to that. Now, granted, if he goes to Cleveland or well, I guess the Giants a little bit less so, but like if he goes to Cleveland, do you really expect, oh, good, it's Cleveland, everything works out for those guys, it's going to go great.
I agree with that if you look at Cleveland over a long period of time. But I think Cleveland, outside of the Deshaun Watson thing, which they've admitted is a mistake, which the Titans don't do, by the way, unless John Robinson's talking. I think Cleveland is not a poorly run organization. They got a bad owner who made a bad call. Do they have a decent roster? Do they have a coach of the year?
Yeah, they obviously have a clue on some things based on basically they just made the one ungodly mistake.
It's hard to get away from your history if you're the Browns. Obviously, there's a lot working against you.
But they've actually hired some people who know what they're doing. Yes, that's a good point.
They do.
I keep agreeing with PK. It's a problem.
Well,
yeah, sorry. Robbie, find something that'll divide us.
I got something.
Okay.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Torpedo bat?
My personal text line.
Okay.
Actually, by the way, Gentry says he gets confused for you a lot too. Speaking of the domes, Gentry asked us at the Tennessean.
And John Glennon, I mean, constantly in the locker room, a guy will be like, "Didn't I just talk to you?"
Rares back to punch you, and they're like, "Oh no, no, you're not PK."
No, I'm the meek one who can't get a question.
Still, he told me my rant needed to be about you, Paul Kaharski, reporting Taylor Zarzour as the next voice of the Titans 3 weeks after he did.
He pointed that out to me.
Your response.
He pointed that out to me, and I immediately corrected to give credit.
Okay.
And pointed out that my report added new stuff to it, that Zarzour would need to live in Tennessee, would be a full-time employee, and would be very much in the ilk of Mike Keith, as opposed to this dropped in guy that we thought was potential independent contractor on Sunday. So there was a lot new to my report. I apologize. I don't look to Jared Stillman's Twitter account for Titans news.
Did he tweet it or he just say it on his show? I don't know.
No, he actually tweeted it, and
yeah, okay.
he sent me the tweet. So I'm apologetic on that. I complain about miscredit all the time. So if I fail at it, I'm quick to resolve it. So I apologize to Jared. I told him that. I immediately tweeted something about it.
Geez, shut up, Jared. He already apologized. Why am I supposed to rant about this?
He's going to stretch it out as long as he can, because apparently Zarzour is a client of Jared's one source. But no, I think it's important to clarify that I want to get that right.
Apparently, other people in town have also ignored Stilley's reporting on this.
I've seen that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Stilley needs to set straight when your Twitter account is full of Mike Vrabel let Terrell Williams coach the preseason game because the league demanded that he do so.
Oh, good God.
People aren't looking to your Twitter account to say, "Oh, what do I need to credit Stilley for?"
This guy's got his finger on the pulse of reality. Let me see if I can find some breaking news. But I mean,
before I hit send on this, I need to sift through 100 tweets of BS for the one nugget that he found.
Okay, so now your apology is a little bit less. The apology is eroding.
I apologize, but I'm contextualized. I apologize and contextualize.
Now let me rip your ass.
Now I'm putting some rap lyrics together.
Yeah, there we go.
Hey, by the way, I think Zarzour's pretty good. So, I mean, obviously that's pretty
I'm
big
not
shoes
that
to
familiar
fill.
with him. Now, I'm told he's going to be nothing that takes away from his Titans responsibilities, but he'll be able to do other stuff.
Yeah,
but
that should be that way.
Yeah, but he calls golf majors on the radio.
Yeah.
They're not going to have him call Thursday, Friday, Saturday and disappear for the final round of a tournament when the Titans are playing at noon on Sunday.
You wouldn't think.
So he's definitely losing that. Now he could call a college football game on Saturday, I would think, and catch up to the team Saturday night here or wherever they're playing.
So he is good. Do we have any?
I'm not that familiar with him.
Can we run some? Do we
I
have
enjoy
any clips of him?
Somebody tweeted me that when he gets excited, he sounds a little bit like Stilley. If that, in fact, is the case,
I don't know if I'd make that. I don't know if I'd make that connection. I don't think they sound very similar.
Now I'm really intrigued. I got to hear this.
615-737-1025. Our phone number. More coming up next with PK. Take more of your Titans questions on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. It's time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament. Cromwell Media, along with partners Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor, proud to announce we'll be back at Hermitage Golf Course coming up on Thursday, May 29th. To make a difference while having a great time, you can join us and a few guest media members, athletes, and musicians as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donation will go to provide life-changing scholarships to families of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. You can sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. PK with us here on the program, taking your thoughts on the Titans. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. PK, we were talking with Charles Robinson yesterday, and we've talked a lot about wide receiver and the obvious need that's there. Towards the top of the draft, it's not necessarily the same as it's been in recent years past where there are some elite guys coming out. Now, if the Titans are picking a quarterback at the top of the draft, I guess that part doesn't really matter to me because they're not going to get one of those guys anyway. But I look at the rest of the draft here, and there are some guys like a Luther Burden or an Igbuka out of Ohio State that could be in play for them at 35. So when it comes to pick number 35, and you have the potential of some what we think to be pretty high-level wide receivers still on the board. You have guys maybe like Landon Jackson and edge rushers that are still on the board. How do you weigh the opportunity to pick one of those guys at key positions of need versus the potential of trading back and maybe missing out on some high-quality guys at positions of need just to pick up some extra picks down the road?
I think there are probably some guys, Burden chief amongst them, like if he gets to 35, it's too hard to resist. But I talked to Borgonzi specifically about this, if you're not trading out of one, how much they covet top 100 picks, can you trade from 30 to 35 to 40, 35 to 45, get yourself back into the third round and come out of that with a second rounder and a third rounder. And he said, definitely look at that. Will this guy still be there at 40? Will one of this cluster of guys still be there at 45? So it's definitely something that they're considering as a possibility. And I think a lot of people would like to see it. The thing is, oftentimes you're thinking about that as a plan, and then there's somebody there that you just think is too good of a value, somebody that's slipped through and fallen, particularly if there's a wide receiver or an edge for how much they need it. And so you say, is this wide receiver or edge substantially better than the rest of the group in our eyes, that it makes it better for us to get this guy than to trade back and get a lesser guy at this position plus a guy at the other position? And I do think there maybe is an outside chance, the receivers are good but not great, that a tight end who is Borgonzi told me, like, a lot of these tight ends now are just big slots. Now they need a tight end who's a big slot who can also line up in line next to the tackle and do some significant blocking. But if they find a guy like that, is Terrence Ferguson that guy? I know that he was in for a 30 visit.
Yep.
Whether it's at 35 or 40 or 45, if they think that tight end's better than the wide receiver there, as much as they need wide receivers, I could see a scenario where they decide that the tight end is a better value, and they surprise people and make that move.
Well, if if the Saints all of a sudden decide, I'm looking at the Saints and I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of the Saints deciding that Cam Ward is the future of their franchise. I mean, that's like in that range is where if the Titans were there, Tyler Warren, there you go. You failed on Brock Bowers a year ago. Get Tyler Warren.
Well, if you're in that range, you're picking up a substantial haul.
You're getting
moving back to
conceivably 3 ones there, which would be miraculous. But I still think I don't think you can take a tight end in the first round of this draft, given what you need. I think you need to find your way.
It's not a tight end, it's Tyler Warren.
Yeah, I understand. But I think you need to find your way to an edge or a receiver. But I get what you're saying. He's pretty spectacular, and the guys at the top of this. I mean, Loveland is also a very intriguing.
He's a good player.
Well, and let's be clear, like in my opinion, anyway, they need a tight end. Like,
they need
the tight ends that they have are not good enough. Like they're okay, they're serviceable players in Wiley and in Chig, but they are at some point here in the next, as they're going through this roster overhaul here, some point in the next couple of years, you're going to have to find a better tight end.
Sooner than later. The only reason it doesn't rank as high is because they have people. They don't have a second receiver on the roster. They don't have a number one edge on their roster. They do have guys that can roll out at tight end, though they are not as good as you want.
But to me, again, it goes back to the whole thing of if he's the best player, if you were in that spot and that's the best player that you believe, that you have rated, then I don't care that you have those guys. Great. Take the best player. That you do that over and over again, you're going to end up having a better football team.
Yeah,
if your evaluations are good. Correct.
That's the kind of discipline that they're talking about. I don't disagree with you. The fan base would need to really be educated on that concept.
Speaking of the Titans and their discipline, Dustin from Hopkinsville said you sold your damn soul to the Titans organization. It sickens him. Your response to this?
Nonsense.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. Because he's not ripping them like for everything, I guess.
I don't know. What decision have they made lately?
Well, I was about to say, what is there to rip them about right now?
Don't worry, he's ready to rip them.
Yeah.
Did you see what Borgonzi got for breakfast at the owners' meeting? Can't trust that guy. I mean,
I tried to serve him eggs, but the Pelicero's eggs, but he chose the quiche.
The food at this place is unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
What'd you have?
I'm sickened by the regular food that I'm now required to eat in my house. Actually, my wife made this phenomenal fish last night that made me feel like I was still at the hotel.
There you go. Nice.
But when I go home to have breakfast this morning of my own doing, it's really going to be disappointing.
Really going to be a letdown. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Nate to the program. Nate, good morning.
Nathan.
Thanks for calling in.
Morning, guys. I dropped off for a brief second earlier, and so I don't know if y'all had gotten into this with PK, but y'all had discussed it just among yourselves earlier in the show. I want PK's opinions on what Trevor Maddich had to say yesterday about Will Levis, just because, he kind of is an outsider in the city. So I just wanted to get your opinions on that, sir.
Yeah, real quickly for those who missed it, basically the summation
run it again
of
if you want.
I don't run it against
no. Okay.
The summation of Maddich's comments were that the conditions around here between the offensive line and wide receiver were so bad that there's no way the Titans could really have a good evaluation of if Levis is good or not.
Which does not line up with what Trevor Maddich was saying during the season last year. Nobody remembers Trevor Maddich being hugely pro Levis.
Do you remember him ripping him? Like I don't know.
Weekly comments last year during Stilly. I don't listen to Trevor Maddich.
Well, then how do you know what he said?
You said that.
I just said I don't remember. I don't remember him being strongly in defense of Levis.
I don't recall that.
If he was strongly in defense of Levis, Stilly would have disagreed with one of his regular guests for the first time in history, and we would have known about it. So, look, there are a batch of people that feel that way. Mel Kiper feels that way. I had a long conversation with him before the combine where he said that, he's ticking off games and things that went wrong. Look, the fact that they had a bad offensive line and bad receivers didn't make Will Levis throw the interception in Chicago. It didn't make him try to flick that ball against the Jets. That level of bad decision-making wasn't a result of a bad roster. It was a result of a bad brain.
Wow. That's harsh.
Is that not true?
Well,
I like Will Levis.
I don't know if he has a bad brain.
Well, he had a bad brain in those
moments.
He had a bad brain in those moments.
Okay.
He's a bad decision maker in those moments.
Brain fart.
This idea that Will Levis, the ability to to characterize Will Levis or make any decisions about Will Levis is completely canceled out by him having a bad offensive line and a bad wide receivers is nonsense. Joe Burrow came into the league and he had a bad offensive line, and you could see that Joe Burrow was good. Josh Allen came into the league and he didn't have great stuff around him, and you were able to.
He was pretty bad early, but yeah.
Yeah. But you were able to see things in his game that told you this guy's got a chance to be pretty good. I mean, quarterbacks don't come into the league generally. If you're looking for a quarterback and you put him in the lineup, very rarely is it Brock Purdy sliding into the lineup of a very good team.
Right.
Quarterbacks are evaluated all the time out of being put into bad situations. Do you soften the grade here and there because the protection was bad on this play and the receiver ran the wrong route on this play, or if the guy had been a step faster here? Yeah, all of that stuff goes into the fact. But you can't say this guy gets a pass for last year because they were bad on the offensive line and they had no receiver. No, that's ridiculous. That's not real life.
You're contradicting yourself a little bit, which I'll get to next.
We'll get into that. Coming up next, we got more with PK. Take more of your thoughts on the Titans. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's Nashville's Best Deal comes from Bad Axe Throwing Nashville, downtown's largest axe throwing venue and your go-to spot for food, fun, and vibes. Enjoy panoramic views of the city, a killer soundtrack, craft cocktails from the full bar, and a Northwoods-inspired menu with a Southern twist. This week, score half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals and grab yours now. Paul Kuharski with us here on the program. Joe said that PK was contradicting himself in the last segment, so let's get to that.
Yeah, you just said, if Levis had showed anything good, well, then why do you think he's going to be a good quarterback someday? You've said that before too. Which is it?
Well,
can he be a good quarterback, or does he have a bad brain?
Well, I think he has a bad brain that could get better. But look, it's happened to other guys. That's why I think if you go and you sit a year behind in Sean Payton's system, in Kyle Shanahan's system, in Sean McVay's system, in some of the Ben Johnson maybe in his system, in whatever, that you have a chance in a league without a lot of good quarterbacks to reinvent yourself and research. But I think it's a time thing more than anything. You got to get out of your first bad experience, go away, kind of be a monk for a year, and that you have a chance then to resurface and be a serviceable to, the 15th best quarterback in the league. I think there's potential that he can do that.
Okay. I've moved on from your contradiction to this is how is Stilly has no clue if Maddich was defending Levis all season. How does he not know what's said on his show?
Here's how. He doesn't listen. He's obsessing on what he's going to say, and the other guest is really irrelevant. It's just somebody to talk long enough to give Jared a chance to come up with the next thing he's going to say.
Okay, that's an interesting theory.
There we go.
So he doesn't know.
Disagree?
Which I don't know. I mean, you are really, you're like our neurosurgeon today, talking brains.
I mean, that's a ridiculous.
He has an interesting one.
He doesn't know.
I'll give you that.
That he doesn't know what a weekly guest said over 17 weeks about the starting quarterback in Tennessee.
He's going to go back through clips, though.
He'll find it.
He'll do the research.
That's right.
That's amazing. He's got to do the research in order to give an answer on that.
So, PK, I want to ask you.
Stay tuned. At 2:00 today, Jared Stillman's going to tell us what his weekly guest said all of last season about the Titans starting quarterback, so that we know if he contradicted himself with his overriding opinion months later.
We'll find out coming up a little bit later today on the program. So I want to ask you specifically about some comments that Callahan had that we talked about the other day. There's all this discussion about the disciplined approach and leaving the door open for trades to happen and move back and collect draft capital. Callahan also said, quote, and I'm reading from paulkuharski.com, I think anytime you can find a quarterback that can lift your football team and you feel is the caliber of player you're talking about, those guys are worth more. There is really no price on those guys. So I guess I'll ask it to you this way. Does the fact that they're apparently still listening, having this disciplined approach, does that tell you that they don't think Cam Ward is that type of guy? Or is this just as simple as people are reading way too much into this? They've not made their decision yet, and maybe they do eventually think Cam Ward is that guy. And no matter what the Giants or the Saints or the Browns or whoever end up offering the Titans, nothing's going to be good enough.
Yeah, well, I said they basically confirmed what we've said all along, and which I think fans misperceive. Fans are like, well, they've got to put out there that they love Cam Ward in order to really get people to try to trade up. I think it's the opposite. If they love Cam Ward at that spot, they're not dealing out unless they get a Herschel Walker type trade thing that just is like, you're going to completely remake your franchise based on what you get here. If they see a franchise quarterback at number one in Cam Ward, there's nothing more valuable than that. And that's what both Borgonzi and Callahan said on the record. If we see a franchise quarterback in the guy that we can draft at number one, we're taking him. There's no sale there. That's more valuable than anything we could get in return, which I've said all along, I think is the way it works. They said it now. So we've got it from them instead of from us.
I mean, but it's like, and I get the discipline thing, but also you're still trying to see that? You still think that there's something that'll tell you that? I mean, you have the information. You know if that's true or not.
Well, you have the information specifically
us.
with Ward. Now, I guess, I mean, there's still a workout with Sanders to go through and all that
Travis
stuff.
Hunter.
But you have like all of your quote unquote touch points are done with Cam Ward.
They could still Zoom with them.
That's true. They could Zoom.
I think an hour.
But I mean, they've met with, Sanders has been in for a visit, right? They've met those guys. The film is still the most important thing.
Yeah.
They've
got a pretty good sense of where they are. They are wary of finalizing it. Now, you can read into that if you want. If they're wary of finalizing it and they're being honest about that, that tells you something about, well.
And it matches up with what people think about these quarterbacks. It matches up.
Yeah. But still.
They're not that guy.
But still, not that guy. But in this draft, with our position, is he close enough to that guy that we feel we've got to move forward with him as that guy?
We should record that and send them to the Titans. That'd be their marketing campaign. It's very exciting for Titans.
Well,
fans.
we know their marketing campaign's been terrific. I mean, look at the way they marketed their free agent class.
You will not talk to them. We want to be humble, so they will not speak.
We do not want to get expectations out of control here.
Humble
Dan Moore gets up there and speaks.
13 new Titans. Anonymous.
No one knows who they are.
We may let you watch them walk off the field after OTA. Stay tuned. I smoke weed constantly.
Thank you.
Coy from Clarksville on the text line says, I like how we don't blame Callahan for how he was supposed to develop Levis. Levis got worse under Callahan. What do you think he's going to do with Ward? This is from Coy in Clarksville.
He didn't do a great job with Levis. But, I mean, there's a fair question about just how good Levis is. I mean, the league judged Levis as not a first-round talent.
Yeah,
and Joe correctly says first-round talent at quarterback generally misses. So what about second-round talent?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and also, Coy, I mean, we've talked about Callahan and the whole development. That's a huge part of this. So if they take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, which would be my choice, then this year is, to me, it's about, do you see progress from that guy? Do you see a good work relationship? Do you see hope moving forward? That overwhelms anything else to me.
I'll tell you one thing, though, that's interesting about this from the Callahan front. Like, we've talked about, like, what's it going to take for him to save his job next year? If you draft Cam Ward and there's meaningful progress there, well, then I've talked about, like, I don't love the idea of drafting Cam Ward and then just firing the coach after that. Now, what happens if they don't draft Cam Ward? What happens if this is the quarterback room heading into next year? Beyond like Brandon Allen or Will Levis getting him to 9 or 10 wins, which just seems laughable at the moment. How does Brian Callahan save his
what
job?
if Will Levis is better? I mean,
pray for Will Levis's health first off.
And they don't win 10 games, but what if Will Levis is markedly better? Is that not on Callahan for improving him?
Yeah, it would be.
I don't think that's saving his job.
Degree. But here's the other thing.
If the wins don't follow with that, it's not saving his job.
At Callahan,
so let's say they go 7-10 and Levis is quite a bit better.
Callahan, I don't think that's saving his job.
You don't think so?
No.
I mean, I have no idea.
I think
Amy could fire anyone at any time.
Yeah, I think it would put him on the fence. I mean, they're talking about slow progress. Here's the thing about Brandon Allen. And I mean, I thought Callahan was ridiculous here. He's talking about, I think Brandon Allen's underrated, and he talked about him being pretty good. And I said, Brian, he's done nothing Tim Boyle. Sorry.
Oh.
He's talking about Tim Boyle. I said, does this, does this, does this. I said, he hasn't had any success. He said, well, in games. Yeah. Well, isn't that where you need to see some success? So, I mean, I understand he's your third/fourth quarterback, but when you're breaking down the tape so thoroughly that you're going to look for minuscule things that are encouraging about a guy who's been absolutely horrid in game performance, I mean, you're grasping at straws.
Good guy around the building, right? That's what it's about.
I mean, clearly.
I mean, generally your fourth quarterback is an undrafted free agent. Are you looking for a fourth quarterback who's good around the building? That's
everybody counts in that culture, Paul.
It's beautiful.
He'll be the third when Levis is in Jacksonville in 2 months.
And Brandon Allen too. He said is an underrated guy. Well, if Brandon Allen is so good, why has there been no market for Brandon Allen ever?
He did. He was very highly complimentary of Brandon Allen.
I mean, yeah, and we're hearing great things about Will Levis. And again, when they draft Cam Ward, we will hear that he was always the number one guy all along, and it was you guys were just out there just guessing and chasing your tail, and we always had him number one.
Well, I think if they say that, I mean, we could come back and say, so you were lying to us throughout the process, and they're going to have to say yes.
Will they?
What are they going to say?
I look forward to this conversation.
What are they going to say? We're going to say, well, you said on March 30th that you were still finishing the process and that you hadn't decided.
Well, that's what we had to say publicly, that we are going to be disciplined. We have a process.
Okay, so that was
but
a lie.
amongst ourselves, amongst ourselves, he was our guy all along. We were not going to tell you that.
So you lied.
Okay, fine. Then who cares?
Yeah, I'm fine with. I mean, I don't know that you have to make a pronouncement that he was your guy all along in order. What are you fluffing him?
Yeah, it's called the NFL. It's what they all do.
They're gonna have a press conference after the draft.
Cam.
I mean,
everybody, here's a video of Cam Ward with Jimmy Wyatt.
This is if that's right. That's if they have a press conference with Cam Ward. I mean, they could draft Cam Ward and then say like, "Hey, see him at rookie camp." I think I do think like it doesn't matter to me if Cam Ward's their guy on April 24th, he's their guy on April 24th. It doesn't matter to me when they decided it.
Yeah. No, that's fine. But I still say, like, some of these guys, the film, all the other stuff is please don't be an axe murderer and we're taking you because the film says we have to take you.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think it's more like, gosh, is there something really good here? So maybe this film looks a little better after we talk to him, right? That's the difference.
Hopefully the Titans do not draft an axe murderer in the first round. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. One more segment coming up next with PK, Robby, and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see Adam Ray is Dr. Phil at the Pinnacle this Sunday. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Dr. Phil, another bald guy. A lot of bald people on the show today.
We're everywhere.
We had National Joe Day last week. I assume there's probably a National Bald Guy Day.
Oh,
there is,
National
but
Dome
you can
Day?
also say every day is National Bald Day.
You
Sure.
could. You could say a lot of things.
And we don't really need a special day, Joe. We're humans.
A National
people.
Bald
The
is,
Human Fund.
Bald is Beautiful Day is September 13th, so we'll have to have a celebration of that
Okay.
here on the show.
So Stilly's responded to you, huh? Stilly, but not to PK or me. He's afraid of us.
Stilly has responded. There's been some digging that's gone on.
This is interesting. Stilly has moved from. I've texted with him. Joe's texted with him. He didn't like what we said, so he texted
He's
Rob.
moving me. Yeah.
So it just moves
Be
to
nice to
and
him,
maybe
Robbie.
this guy will be more favorable.
Be gentle. Be gentle.
So apparently, after some digging, there
By
has
his
been,
producer,
by his producer,
not him.
Ian
Hi,
Safar.
Ian.
He has determined that apparently Trevor Maddich said that Rudolph needs to continue to play until he proves he can't do it because Levis is making crazy mistakes to lose them games. And that was on October the 1st.
There will be no time
Okay.
spent on that show today about the guest contradicting himself. Agreeable, Ian, we call him.
So then, yeah, that's what I thought I remember. I don't remember Trevor Maddich being especially like attacking Will Levis. He's pretty level-headed in general, but yeah, I just don't remember any point where I was like, really? You think? Yeah, that's pretty favorable. But yesterday was like impassioned.
It was
defense of him.
It was. There's not a whole lot of that going around right now.
No, but you know what? There is some. I mean, every time this comes up, first of all, some people get mad that we even talk about Levis anymore. Sorry, like he's still in the equation.
He's QB1 right now.
Yeah, but there are always people who respond and say, I don't think he got a fair shake. So look, I'm willing to admit being wrong. Whenever it happens, I will admit it. And so if this happens here, then
I'll still be
will
stunned
too.
And look, there's a large range of possibilities with Will Levis. I don't think there's much of a trade market for him, but I think there's a chance he's quarterback one. I also think there's a chance he's traded. I've been told not to shut the door on that possibility. So,
I mean, of course you can't shut the door. I mean, the whole movement here is those two guys are 2 and 3. They draft somebody and he's out for a 6th for a 7th, right? I mean, that's still the way most likely thing to happen.
I don't think there should be any urgency to get rid of him because I don't think Allen is any better than Will Levis. Will Levis has more upside in a better situation, like people are saying. I mean, I think Will Levis should have accounted for himself better despite the Titans' deficiencies. But given a better line and better receivers and stuff as a backup, I would prefer him coming to 3 weeks of play, subbing for Cam Ward than Brandon Allen.
Well, I said earlier, I think this is them hedging their bets. If they do get blown away by some offer, now they can pivot and say, okay, Will, you get the year, but we just improved our team a ton for the long term.
Well, they're not getting blown away by any offer for Will Levis.
No, I'm saying blown away by
flag
offer for
number
one.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they don't take a quarterback in this draft and, okay, I guess Will is QB1, right?
Conceivable. All of it's conceivable.
Did you see Vrabel say that if Travis Hunter ends up in New England, that they'd be open to him playing both sides of the ball? Vrabel throwing it out there that he's going to put Travis Hunter wherever he can put him.
Vrabel's out
Vrabel's
there
a media
saying
darling
a lot
right
of
now.
stuff.
He's
out there.
Vrabel
Did you have
at the
a good time
owners'
with him?
meetings, absolute rock star. Like you would think that he's won Super Bowls as as coach, not just as a player, but by far the most popular. I mean, I didn't see Andy Reid parading around.
What's Vrabel doing out there? Doing like tequila body shots? What
Well,
are we talking about here?
I mean, he's on every show. You know, he had the biggest crowd at his table. And, you know, everybody's coming. I was talking to him at the party, having a drink, and people are just coming to say hello.
Kiss the ring, huh?
Kiss the ring.
Yeah. Well, good old Vrabes. Boy, it's gonna be awfully interesting.
Yeah, it is. His goal is to win the division. I don't know if you've heard that before, but that's his goal. He made that pretty clear the other day. They wanted to win the division.
I could tell a quick,
very quick.
Are they
going
funny
to go
story.
good to great?
He's telling me about their cap guy whose name is Miller. He's not the cap guy, but he's their numbers guy with the Patriots. And then very shortly after, there's a guy, Miller, that he's introducing me to. So I presume it's the same guy. So I go, hey, big fan of your cap work. Like thinking I'll look like, hey, wow, I know.
Oh, this guy knows our organization inside and out.
And then we start talking more, and he's talking about the NBC golf tournament in Reno and that Vrabel plays and everything. I realized this is not the same guy or whatever. So later I say to Vrabel, you really set me up with that Miller. We're talking about Miller, the number guy. And then you introduced me to Miller, the golf guy. And I say, a fan of your cap work. He bends over laughing. He's like, yeah, I did kind of set you up there with the two Millers. He totally praised him for the wrong thing. He's got nothing to do with the cap.
Vrabel still getting after Paul.
You and Vrabel playing grab ass. Wonderful.
Yeah, oh yeah, grab ass. Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks.
That does it for us today on the program. Chasing Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.